ဒီကတရားထုတ်တဲ့ယောဂီပုဂ္ဂိုလ်တွေဒီလိုအထုတ်တဲ့အခါမှာအားသက်ပြီးတော့ရှိထိတ်သားကရှိမှရအောင်မတည်လေးဖြစ်သွားရင်တခဏတစ်စက္ကန့်လောက်စိတ်ရှိမှုသမာဓိရသွားတယ်ဆိုတော့သမာဓိလေးဖြစ်သွားတယ်အဲဒီသမာဓိဟာဘုရားမြတ်စွာကခဏကစိတ်တည်တဲ့တာလို့သုံးထားပြီးတော့အတိတ်ကပေါ်တဲ့အခါမှာခဏမတ္တဖြစ်ပြီးကိုသမာဓိလို့ခေါ်ထားတော့ဘုရားကတည်ကျနေတာကတော့ခဏကစိတ်တည်တဲ့တာခဏကသမာဓိပေါ့ခဏကသမာဓိဒါမင်းရဲ့သာဓုနဲ့လက်တွေ့ပေါင်းစပ်ပြီးတော့ပြောတော့တယ်ခဏကလည်းဒီဘက်မှာသူ့ပြုပုဂ္ဂိုလ်ထည့်ရတာကတော့အခြားသမာဓိတွေလည်းရှိသေးတယ်ဆိုတဲ့အဓိပ္ပာယ်ကြားပါတယ်လက်တွေ့အထုတ်နေတဲ့အခါမှာစိတ်မစမ်းကြည့်သေးရင်အခြားသမာဓိဟောင်းအကြောင်းတွေထည့်ပြောတဲ့သုတ်သွေးတော်မှာဆိုလို့ခဏကသမာဓိစံတတ်ပြီးသူ့အမျိုးဟာရနဲ့လက်တွေ့ရှင်းတော့လို့ရှင်းတော့ဘူးနဲ့ပြတ်ဆက်ပြီးတော့ပြောလို့ရှိရင်ပိုရှင်းမယ်ထင်တာလည်းမဟုတ်လို့ဒီလိုရှင်းပြီးတော့ပြောရတော့ပါသူစိတ်နားဆောင်တဲ့ယောဂီများသဘောပေါက်တော့ပါတယ်ကိုယ်ဘက်ကအလုံးလုံးဖို့ပဲဒါပဲရှိတော့တာပါသဘောပေါက်ပြီးတော့လုံးမလုံးလည်းပဲခဏကသမာဓိဖြစ်ဖို့တော့သိတော့မလွယ်ပါဘူးခဏကသမာဓိအာမကောင်းဘူးဆိုလို့ရှိရင်လည်းပဲပညာဖြစ်ဖို့မလွယ်ပါဘူးဝိပဿနာဉာဏ်ဖြစ်ဖို့မလွယ်ပါဘူးဒီလိုခဏကသမာဓိဖြစ်အောင်ဒီတိုင်းမှရှိဒီလိုမျိုးစောင့်ဖို့သင်ထားဆိုတဲ့အတိုင်းပါလေဘုံပေဝတ်တာပေါ်တဲ့အာယုံမလွတ်တာချိန်သားကဆရာဆက်ပြီးတော့မှတ်ဖို့ကမိမိတို့တောင်းပဲဆိုတာပေါ့လေအဲဒီတောင်းစိတ်အများကြီးရှိရပါတယ်အဲဒါသိရကြည့်ပါလား
Yesterday, Sayadawgyi spoke about how when yogis are practicing, when they apply effort and aiming to observe the object steadfastly, when sati occurs, second by second, collectedness of mind also occurs. The samadhi that the Buddha described, he called it Kanika Ekagata. And in revealing the meaning of this, it was also referred to as Kanamatatitiko, samadhi that is established for a moment, and also Kanika samadhi, momentary concentration. Yesterday, Sayadawgyi spoke about this in terms of theory and practice. Because the adjective kanika, or momentary, is used, one understands that there are also other types of concentration, or samadhi. But when we practice, if we describe all of these different ones together, it may be confusing. So Sayadawgyi felt that it is more clear to describe the samadhi that arises in practice, kanika samadhi, and just describe that alone. Those who listened carefully understood, and one just needs to do the work then. So if one doesn't apply effort and aiming to create sati, then it won't be easy for samadhi, kanika samadhi, to develop. And if kanika samadhi is weak, then panya, wisdom, will also not be easy to develop. So in order to make kanika samadhi arise and become good, one simply has to, as the saying goes, one has to observe at the moment of arising with aim and effort. So every arising object, starting with the rising and the falling, the yogi has to apply ardent effort and accurate aim in order to observe the object steadfastly. So this is the task of the yogi. This is always present, and it's very important.
Tajja yogiပုဂ္ဂိုလ်မှာအတိအကျပေါ်ပေါ်လာတဲ့အာယုန်တွေကိုသူပေါ်တော့ပေါ်တဲ့ပူလို့ရပြီတော့မှာပေါ့လေလိုက်မှတ်ရမလို့တာလိုက်မှတ်ရဆက်ပြီးတော့မှတ်တယ်ဆိုတာတော့ဟုတ်ပါတယ်အမိလေးတွေတတ်တာပြီးတော့မှတ်ရတာဒါကြတော့ဒီလိုယောဂီတွေဝင်လေးကြပါတယ်ဘုရားနည်းကြသုတ္တမာရိဆရာတော်ဆရာကြီးဩဝါဒတော်တိုင်းအားထုတ်ရတာဟာအတိအကျပေါ်တဲ့အာယုန်တွေကိုအမိကတ္တနေရတာဝင်လေးတယ်ဒီလိုလည်းပြောကြပါတယ်ဒါလေးခံကြည့်ရင်မရဘူးလားဆိုတော့လေဒါလေးကြည့်ရင်ပြီးတာပဲဆိုတော့ဒီလိုလည်းပဲသူတို့ဆက်ချက်လေးကိုလည်းထုတ်ကြပါတယ်ဒီတော့အဲ့ဒီယောဂီပုဂ္ဂိုလ်တွေကိုတော့ကိုယ်တိုင်လုပ်ကြည့်ပါလို့အဲ့ဒီတိုင်းကဒါပဲပြောချင်တာပါပဲအမိကတ္တပြီးတော့မှားရတာတကယ်လိုအပ်လို့အမိကတဲ့သဘောကမလိုအပ်ပဲအပူတွေလောက်တာတော့မဟုတ်ပါဘူးအဲ့ဒါနားလည်ရပါတယ်
At the start of the practice, yogis need to observe every newly arising object while they are fresh. One has to observe, and one has to do so without missing. So one has to keep on observing the objects, and one also not only to observe, but one needs to apply a label as they observe the objects. And some yogis find this a burden. They say, this method which the Buddha taught, which Mahasi Sayadaw explained, using labels when observing every newly arising object, is very tiring. Can't we just look at it? Isn't that enough? They ask. Sayadawgyi would like to say to this, just try it. Because labeling is really needed. It's not optional.
အတန်လေးတွေထွက်တတ်ပြီဆိုလို့ရှိရင်စလုံးလေးတွေတစ်ခုတစ်ခုပေါင်းပြီးတော့ဘဝရပြတဲ့အနဲ့ပြတဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်တွေအဲ့ဒါလေးလည်းပဲနည်းနည်းကစပြီးတော့ပြင်ကြပါတယ်သိကြရကြီးကျင်လို့မရပါဘူးဒီမှာအင်းလေးပါတာဆိုလို့ရှိရင် ABCD သူကနောက်စလုံးပေါင်းလေးတွေပေါ့လေ CPK သူ RAC ရဲ့သူစပြီးပေါ့လေဒါမျိုးလေးတွေပေါ့လည်းစပြီးရတယ်စိတ်ကတည်းကတင်သွားလို့မရပါဘူးဆရာတို့သူကလည်းပဲအတန်မှထွက်ပြရတယ်လို့တပည့်ဖြစ်သူကလည်းပဲအတန်မှလိုက်ပြီးတော့ထွက်ရတယ်သက်သက်အတန်နားထောင်ပြီးတော့နားထောင်တဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်တွေကအတန်ပြီးပြမှနားထောင်တဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်တွေကဘာပြောတယ်ဆိုတာနားလည်နိုင်ပါလေအတန်မပြီးပြလို့ရှိရင်မရပါဘူးဆိုတော့အဲ့ဒါလေးကြည့်ဖို့အတုဒ္ဒယောဂီဆိုတော့ကိုယ်ရဲ့ပေါ်လာတဲ့အာယုလေးတွေသူတို့ပေါ်လုံးပေါ်သေးမှာအမြင်လေးတွေတက်တက်ပြီးတော့မှတ်ရတာဟာအရေးကြီးတဲ့ကိစ္စတရားပါပဲအရေးကြီးဆုံးကိစ္စတရားလို့လည်းဆိုနေပါတယ်အရေးကြီးဆုံးကိစ္စတရားမှာဆက်ပြီးသက်ရှိပါတယ်ဒီမလုံးမလဲမဖြစ်ဘူးလုံးကိုလုံးအောင်ဒီကိုယ်လည်းလုံးရမယ်သုံးအချိန်မှစိတ်ကြီးလုံးရပါတယ်အဲဒီရဲ့နောက်ပိုင်းမှာတော့အကျိုးရတာတွေအများကြီးပါပဲအကန့်အသတ်မရှိအကျိုးရနိုင်ပါတယ်အဲဒီအချက်လေးချက်နဲ့ပြည့်တဲ့အရာကိစ္စဟာအရေးကြီးဆုံးကိစ္စတွေမှာပါတာပဲကျောင်းဥစ္စာကလေးဟာဒီစလုံးကိုအတန်တော်ကလေးတွေမှန်နဲ့ပေါ့လေသိကြဖို့ရသိအရေးကြီးပါတယ်တမ္မာမတော့မယ်မမဆက်ဖို့ထွက်ရမယ်ဆရာလည်းပဲမမဆက်ပြကလေးရတယ်မမလက်ပြီးတော့ထွက်ရမယ်ကိုယ်လည်းအတန်ထွက်ရမယ်စိတ်မမလုပ်ပြရမယ်စိတ်ပြည့်တယ်ပဲသင်ပြရမယ်အကျိုးရတာကတော့အစလုံးလေးကြီးအတန်မှန်းလာပြီဆိုလို့ရှိရင်နောက်စလုံးပေါင်းလေးတွေလည်းပဲပေါင်းပြီးတော့ထွက်ကြတာပဲနောက်ဝါကြတူတူလေးတွေဆင်းတဲ့တူတူလေးတွေအကြောင်းအရာနဲ့ပတ်သက်ပြီးတော့ရေးထားတာလေးတွေဒါလေးတွေတစ်ပြေးပြေးဖတ်တတ်လာတာပဲပထမတော့အတန်ထုတ်ပါပါလေနောက်သဘာကျွမ်းကျင်သွားပြီဆိုလို့ရှိရင်အတန်မထုတ်ရပဲနဲ့အတန်မထွက်ရပဲနဲ့စိတ်ကြီးရဖတ်သွားရင်အကုန်လုံးနားလည်နေတော့ပါပဲသူတရားရှိမှတ်တဲ့ယောဂီပုဂ္ဂိုလ်တွေလည်းဒီတိုင်းပါပဲဒီဘက်မှာတတိတော်ကြီးများအားဖြင့်မကောင်းသေးလို့ရှိရင်တော့အမြင်လေးတက်ပြီးတော့မှတ်ရတာဟာစိတ်အသိပဲရှိပါတယ်အကျိုးလည်းအမှန်များပါတယ်အဲ့ဒါလေးတော့မှတ်ထားဖို့လိုပါတယ်
In the past, Sayadawgyi spoke in a general way about how a child going to kindergarten starts to learn. So that the child will be happy in school. They start out by singing and learning rhymes. And when the child enjoys going to school, then they start to learn the alphabet together with saying things, together with verses and rhymes. So in every language, children start out learning in this way, starting by learning the letters. They say the sounds, and at the same time they learn what the letter looks like. And when they know the alphabet, then they learn words and vocabulary, starting with just a few small words. They don't learn very much all at once. In English, for example, the alphabet A, B, C, D, and so on, they learn the alphabet like this, and then they start to learn spelling small words like CAT, cat, and RAT, rat. And so when they learn like this, the children can't just learn it in their minds. The teacher shows the children how to pronounce the letters and words, and the students copy the teacher, and they learn how to make the sounds properly. So we should look at this example in thinking about what yogis do. For starting yogis, it's very important to use labels when observing the arising object. It's one of the most important things to do. A task that is very important to do, is among the most important things one can do, has 4 characteristics. And these are, first of all, that it is something a person must do, him or herself. Someone else must do without fail. So the first characteristic is that the task must be done without fail. You can't not do it. And the second is that one has to do it oneself. Someone else cannot do it for you. And the third characteristic is that it needs to be done in time and on time. It needs to be done regularly and before it's too late. And after all this, later, what will happen is that there will be innumerable benefits, countless benefits come from doing the task. This is the 4th characteristic. So a task which has these 4 characteristics is among the most important things that one can do. And it's very important to teach children how to say the letters, how to read letters. And it's a task that the child has to do, him or herself. It has to be done, it has to be learned on time and in time. And it's very beneficial, because when the child is able to say the letters, recognize the letters, read them, read words, then sentences, short paragraphs, read about things, then slowly the child builds up knowledge. And the first thing that the child learns to do is how to make the sounds. And later, when the child is skilled, the child's able to read silently and understand everything just by looking at it. So yogis too, at first, the sati and samadhi is not yet strong, and to label is very beneficial. So we should make a note of this.
Buddha Sabima Pannatti so that's very don't have a Pannatti Rupamano Piano Bali Yellow Piano Nalebu Kremara Tipiero Tiki Tato Tiki Tiki Tato you do the Yavara. Mimi Mayo, Mimi watching Mayo. Teacher is nice, Mimi Mago where Kurema Santaki Marari, Purari, Janari, Lurari, Kerari, Purari, Purari, Era Porari. Nothing else of that. Tigari, Tikari, Kandari, the reality what it is. Serari go and let look over and let the meaning body. And let the day see and let them see and let them use it. I go out Paramata asking. Yana to your electric attack is a card of cover. ကိုယ်ပိုင်ညာကိုယ်ပိုင်သိရတဲ့အရာတွေဒါတွေကိုပရမတ္ထလို့ခေါ်ပါတယ်ဒါတကယ်ရှိအဟုတ်ရှိပါတယ်သူကတော့အဲဒီတကယ်ရှိအဟုတ်ရှိတဲ့အရာတွေကိုသူရှိတဲ့သဘောအလိုက်ပေါ်အမြင်လေးတွေဖြစ်ပေါ်လာပါတယ်အမြင်လေးတက်ပြီးတော့ဓမ္မတိရပါတယ်အဲဒါပညာတိလို့ခေါ်ပါတယ်နော်
In the Buddhist text, there's a word called Pannatti, and in Burmese it's pronounced similarly Panyat, and in English sometimes it's referred to as concept or name. And the literal meaning of Pannatti is hard to understand. So what it means is that it causes us to know. It makes things known. It makes something known. And there are many things to be known in us and in the environment. So in our body, for example, things to be known are hardness, softness, coarseness, gentleness, solidity, flowing, stickiness, heat, cold, lightness, stiffness, tension, movement, knowing, contact, feeling. There are many things. And these are things, how should I say, these are referred to as things which have meaning, or I'm trying to think of a good word for this, but these are things which are meaningful. They refer to something. And the things that I just listed, that you just mentioned, these are all things that constitute ultimate reality. That is, there are things that are directly observable, directly known by us. This is what I called akapattaka. Something that it can be directly known by our mind, also called paramatta, ultimate reality. And names appropriate to these things come into being, and we know these things by their names. And this is what Pannatti means, the names which cause us to know something which has meaning.
And you said that Dhamma Dhamma Chavare. Where a Pinidana Pule to let a tongue of Dhamma. A malo Pudo in a so hot. So, either the Palu Put it how later the don't know. Later the report is don't know. To clear like such a Vawa like body. Now, when I talk up to the Pala, there are Pali to set all to cover it. Start to the Vawa like Popo or to a sound like body, sound to a like body, Popo or the Vawa. Layodo. Kita ni era tiga punya lu kawar. Punya dina paune lu tiga punya dina lu kawar. Kipore bawa ne layo ni kisi sepole tama. Era tiga punya lu kawar. Kali lu rai badarai ma era isi badarai.
to name something or label something, the name or the label needs to be appropriate for the thing that we are labeling. So in the body, heat arises, we label it as heat, heat, or hot, hot. We can't just go and call it cold. Lightness arises, we don't just go and call that heaviness. Heaviness arises, we don't call that lightness. According to what it is, there are names that are used, names appropriate to the thing itself. And the word for this is in Pali is Tajja Pannatti. So ta and ja and Pannatti. Pannatti means name. And name, it's a name which occurs or arises, that's what the ja stands for, according to the true nature of the thing, according to this thing which arises due to causes. So it is a name which causes us to know the thing, and it's a name that is suitable, it suits the thing itself. And these names, these words, exist in every language, this type of naming. So a name arises, comes into existence that is appropriate for the true nature that is there. So a label or a name is just a name, and this is what the word Tajja Pannatti means, a name. Name appropriate to the object. And because the name refers to something which is really there, it's called in Pali Vijamana Pannatti. Vijamana means it's something that actually exists, not imaginary.
ဒါကိုစိတ်တပညာတည်ကြည့်တာမျက်စိမှိတ်လိုက်တဲ့မှိတ်တဲ့တဲ့အတုံးလုံးမျက်စိဖွင့်လာတဲ့ဖွင့်တဲ့တဲ့အတုံးလုံးစိတ်ကြည့်လို့ဒီအောက်တဲ့ဖြစ်တဲ့အောက်တဲ့တဲ့အတုံးလုံးဖြစ်ပေါ်လာတဲ့သဘာဝအလိုက်ပေါ်ဒီအတုံးလုံးလေးတွေနောက်ကနေပတ်ပါလာတာပေါ့လေဒါကြဒီအကုန်လုံးဘာလို့ဆိုသစ္စာပညာတည်သူခေါ်ရတယ်
Meditating yogis now, when they come to a sitting posture, they put their mind on the abdomen, and when they breathe in, the abdomen rises or expands. When they breathe out, the abdomen falls back down. So we use the words rising and falling. Rising is just when the abdomen becomes stiff or full of air, tight and tense. The falling, the abdomen collapses, gets empty, becomes relaxed. So these are names, rising and falling are names that are appropriate to the true nature that is really there at the moment. When there's heat, the name that refers to it is heat. Cold is referred to as cold. When there's feeling, it's feeling. When it's bad feeling, then it's bad. If there's lifting, the vocabulary lifting is used. Moving is referred to as moving. Placing is placing. Standing is standing. At the moment of lifting, moving, placing, there are mind and matter occurring. And we use ordinary words, lifting, moving, placing, standing, to refer to what is to the true nature that is happening at that moment. And these are referred to, these names that are used are referred to as Tajja Pannatti, names appropriate to the thing itself. And in the same way, there's phenomena such as closing the eyes, opening the eyes, or focusing. So these, in those moments, true nature is occurring. And according to the true nature that happens in that moment, the vocabulary of the terms or names, closing the eyes, opening the eyes, focusing, these come into use, these arise. And these are all called Tajja Pannatti, names which suit the thing itself.
The power theory, popular the power theory, Jonah the power theory. So came as a who can shadow Wire Yoga, the shadow to the fire, the shadow, who one by six and direction, one by got founded on it. Founded to that, don't know. According to that, don't know that is the thing up there. When I saw the calculator, the Bawa Damago, Pramata Damago, Leo Dovoli, to the left of it, I don't know. That is the thing that is over. Take that or a level to the left of it, I don't know. So I learned a child that to the left of it, I don't know. I don't know where to go. To get the Bawa simple. The Bawa simple, don't you be the polar and US. You see that as well. And see a lot. Pone Kakama, Sauna, Sinner. လှုပ်ရှားတာအဲ့ဒါရဲ့တကယ်ရှိအောင်ရှိနေတယ်အဲ့ဒါပရမတ္ထအစစ်ပဲသူကတော့မျက်မှောက်တွေ့လို့ရနိုင်တဲ့ပရမတ္ထအစစ်ပရမတ္ထသဘာဝလို့လည်းခေါ်ပါတယ်သဘာဝဆိုတာဘာဝဆိုတာဘဝတိဥပ္ပစ္စတိဘာဝဘဝတိဥပ္ပစ္စတိဖြစ်နေရှိနေတော့ကြောင့်သတ်ဖြစ်နေတာလည်းရှိနေတာဖြစ်တဲ့ဖြစ်တဲ့ရှိတဲ့ရှိနေတာပဲသာတတ်ရှိဒါညလို့မရဘူးဒီတောင်းတာအဲ့ဒါဘာဝအဲ့ဒီဘာဝဟာဝါယောဓာတ်မှာဒါဒီတောင်းတဲ့ပြင်နဲ့ထုတ်တဲ့သဘောရှိတာပါတကောကိုယ်ကြီးဖြစ်သောသစ္စာတတ်တယ်မရောကိုယ်ကြီးဖြစ်သောဘာဝတောက်တွင်းထုတ်ထားတဲ့အဖြစ်သဘောသဗ္ဗဝကိုယ်ကြီးသဘောဝါယောရရဲ့အဖြစ်သဘောအဲ့ဒါကိုဓမ္မနဲ့ဆွဲပြီးတော့သဘာဝဓမ္မလို့လည်းဒီလိုလည်းပဲပြောကြပါတယ်ဓမ္မတို့ဒီပဲအခြားခြားကိုယ်ရဲ့မှာလည်းပဲအတိအကျပေါ်နေတာလည်းရှိနေကြပါအဲ့ဒါလည်းအကုန်လုံးသဘာဝဓမ္မတွေရှိတယ်အဲ့ဒါကတော့တကယ်ရှိအောင်ရှိတာပဲ
So we apply these names, Tajja Pannatti, names appropriate to the thing, when on the true nature which arises. So the true nature is simply mind and matter. And in the body, the most obvious of what occurs in the body is the air element, Sayadawgyi. So one puts the attention on the abdomen in sitting, and the rising arises. So rising is the name, Tajja Pannatti, the name that refers to the way the abdomen gets stiff and expands. It describes this occurrence. And for falling, also, falling is just a name for the true nature that happens in that moment, the collapsing of the abdomen. Relaxing, lifting, moving, placing. These are just names. They're not true nature themselves, but it is the name that refers to the thing. So what is really there at the moment of lifting or moving or placing, what is there is stiffness or tension or movement. And these are things which can really be seen by us directly, and they are also called sabhava, or true nature. So this word bhava, the first step, this part of it, bhava, bhavati, upajati, bhavo. This means that the word bhava is explained etymologically, that because it happens, because it exists, it is called bhava. So stiffness, for example, that occurs in the body, this is really there. And the word sabhavo is explained as sako bhavo, sabhavo. Sako means individual. That means that the nature, the characteristic of air, for example, is not like or not mixed up with any other type of characteristic. It is unique to the air element. So sako bhavo, sabhavo, its own individual nature. And together with this, the word dhamma is added, sabhava dhamma. So there are many types of sabhava dhamma besides stiffness and tension. And these are really there, they really exist.
ဒီလိုကိုယ်ရဲ့သဘာဝတွေစာပေရသုံးဖို့ ကုလိုချမ်းသာခြင်းအရာသို့မဟုတ်အချင်းချင်းဆွေးနွေးခြင်းအရာသိနေပြီဆိုလို့ရှိရင်အမိပါသိနေပြီဆိုလို့ရှိရင်သူတို့လက်တွေ့သိလို့တဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်ဟာဘာဖြစ်လို့အမိကြီးတတ်နေရမှာလဲပေါ်လာတဲ့ဟာလေးကဒါလေးစိုက်ကြည့်ရင်မပြီးဘူးလားအမိကြီးကနေရှုပ်နေတာပဲသူတရားထုတ်တယ်ဆိုတော့ကိုယ်ရဲ့တဘာဝတွေသိဖို့လုပ်တာပဲတဘာဝသိဖို့ဒါအရေးကြီးတယ်အမိကြီးမထည့်ပဲနဲ့သူ့ပါဒါလေးသိရင်ပြီးတာပဲဒါလုံးရင်းမဟုတ်လားအမိကြီးတတ်တဲ့အတွက်ဘာကျေးဇူးရှိတယ်လဲအဲ့ဒါလည်းစဉ်းစားကြရပါ
There are many types of true nature in one's body, sabhava, and we learn about this. We learn by reading or by hearing, by discussing, and we know when we know their names, when we know their true nature. Why is it that a person who wants to know this true nature should use labels in order to know the true nature? Why should they use names? It just confuses things to use labels or names in order to know true nature. Meditation is for knowing sabhava, is for knowing true nature. To know sabhava is very important. So, isn't it enough just to look and see? Why do we use labels? So this is something to think about. So, because of that type of doubt that arises, that meditating yogis have when they do the practice, in the text, this is posed as a question and answered, because in order to answer this doubt that people have. in the text it starts off by saying nanucha, which is like saying, I have a question, excuse me. And the person is trying to simply point out what they see as being a fault in an open and honest way. So the question that arises is, isn't true nature like stiffness or tension or movement, relaxation, lightness, pushing, pulling, heaviness, pressing? Isn't this true nature that is involved in moments of like rising or falling, lifting, moving, placing, and standing? Isn't it being known by means of a name or a concept? When we label, aren't we just using a name to try to know true nature? So can't we just know true nature separately without these names? That's the question.
The people who made it, made one at the Bawaja, Molo, every made one will use Hanomia, and let her have it. Six and the Namale, the Bawadia, the Namale, set up with a Mamare, the Nama is Bani, but it is a thing. I never over Bagay. Tomorrow, you are me, and lazy, Raja, you tell about it. Malwesa, and women in a little about it, that's what I want. That's a chance at three hours. Tomorrow, you come there, the mathematical cooler will set up with us. So I say, somebody will sit there, that's what I want. Say, after zero, the tomorrow will sit there. I want it. I will say, right, my lord, to the way we tell about it. The lady, the lonely, Mapata, the lonely lady, what it is, but my own baby. Now, the low lady, many are started the other one. They are the country at the world. So look at one minute to buy it.
The question raised contains a valid point. So the text goes on to say, yes, this is true. But this only occurs in the early part of the practice, before concentration and knowledge is developed, before these are good. When power has not yet arisen, when the observation is not yet continuous, when sati, samadhi, and panya have not yet arisen, we have to use labels. And it's similar to a child who learns the letters. First of all, saying them aloud, spelling out, learning short words, reading aloud. This is similar to what we do.
Saudi will have fun in that. Some of the particular you that have fun in that. Every guy of India starting the low body, the lonely life bubble and low. The Dari is a cleaner body. That's why the Dari is a listing of Yara solution. A listing of Lona solution. The go election, Miyazina, Dobo, Matanzana, Legion Song in that all. Lord, they had here, Lodi, I did away. Through Clipper to the Miyawi. The good man, the Marian, Hamakong, that is, you set up it up. The Kuna Group, the Quavia, so true with you, whatever. That are Lodi, rather. Loya may have all alone, but look in the hammer. Our local law, I don't know. Toto Bawanaya Pana Uttamanaya Bawanaya Sudaguna Sakina Sekri from you to the other. The famous the day, the Guna is Sessa, the Kuchani, the Guna is Sessa, the body. Start Killa, Killa Hare, Senator Yuri, Toto Lara, Puyo Lara, Yara, whatever. So the city is now the anybody has said that so is a meter for Maduro. We have to stand by the sun, but take a make to water. You need to take this up here, the second year. So that you come on your stone and go over there. So that you said to Maduro, take a little, I think they pour it out of our such a little journey to have teaching me out of our
So when one practices reading a lot, then one becomes skilled in reading, and one no longer needs, as one develops in reading and goes from grade to grade, eventually one no longer needs to read out loud or spell out loud, but one can just read and know what is on the page. So when a yogi has enough practice, it's the same way. Before one develops the ability, then one has to use labels. Before samadhi, jnana, before concentration and the knowledge which comes from concentration, before this is developed, one needs to use labels in order to be able to see the objects clearly, and so that one thing and another, so that one will be able to see the difference between two different things. So it's not that this is, labeling is not something that the yogis are asked to do because it is inappropriate. It's very appropriate to do it. However, as the text continues to explain, Bhavanaya Panditabhivamsa, when the bhavana mind is developed, that is, when the bhavana consciousness occurs one after another continuously, first of all, it comes into existence, and then it gets developed, becomes larger, becomes stronger, better. So when it is well developed, then it is said, Panyatting samatekanitva sabhava yeva chitam tikati. At that time, when the bhavana mind is well developed, then what happens is knowledge develops stage by stage. The mind goes beyond concept, it goes beyond the name, and it rests on each newly arising object and knows it.
Now, the man at the sister, such you were dancing to the say, are you now, by what I use it, you don't have that is a shadow to and you suffer Malo Sari, you live in your so Tashiva, the rent of what you over, so you have to the rent of what you have over to Yalan. So, she's on the notion of Yabu, Pamalo and Yabu. The rent of what you did is that the other Pogori, and Yabu or Tijavare. To the college, to go to Olivia, Australia, shoe like we know. Kureva, the day, the Bavatia, go. Took the Tadayu to the Tana, that is a jar of pure argument. But you look from Hago, Malonaro. That is mean as I don't say, မကြတော့ပါဘူးဒီပုဂ္ဂိုလ်ကတကယ်ချမ်းသာစိတ်ကိုတွေ့နေတာပါပဲအဲ့ဒါဒီနေ့ဒီကြောင်းရလေးကိုစပြီးတော့ပြောပါတယ်နောက်နေ့ဒီတောင်းမှာစုမှတ်ပုံနည်းနဲ့အတူပေါ့လေဆိုတော့စိတ်ကပြည့်ရည်နဲ့စုနေရနေပြီးတော့နောက်စိတ်ကပြည့်ရည်လွတ်တော်အမြင်မတတ်သေးတဲ့မှတ်နိုင်ပုံလေးတွေဆက်ပြီးတော့ညံဖြစ်ပုံလေးတွေပြောပါအောင်မယ်ဒီနေ့ကတော့ဒါပဲဆိုကြဦးစို့
Later on, when one noting follows another without a break, and the pure mind seems to be lining up one by one, mental energy has been developed. Later, when Vipassana knowledge is complete, there is no longer any need to use labels. One can simply watch and know. Try it and see. Within 3 weeks, and for some people within 2 weeks, one can reach this stage. However, if one is thinking or not working properly, it is not possible. People who practice respectfully, with meticulous care and continuity, are sure to gain this knowledge. The true nature which really exists within one's body will appear to be very swift. Then one will be very happy. And one will no longer want to miss a single noting. If one continues in this way, it won't take long. The person is sure to gain true happiness and peace. Today, Sayadawgyi has begun to speak about this. Tomorrow, he will speak about how one needs to note using Tajja Pannatti, appropriate labels or concepts, and how one comes to be able to note and know without using labels. This is all for today.